You remember the exact second the mood in the stadium shifted, the kind of shift that sounds like someone quietly pulling the rug out from under you. The Eagles scored 3 touchdowns in 3 possessions, built a 21-0 lead, and the whole thing smelled like business as usual. Then everything went quiet. The Cowboys, who had looked lost, suddenly looked like a team that had been waiting to remember who they were. By the time Brandon Aubrey's 42-yard kick sailed through as time expired, Dallas had erased a 21-point hole and stunned Philadelphia 24-21. Reuters. If you want the short version of how a massive collapse happens, start hot, stop moving. The Eagles came out like a freight train. Jalen Hurts racked up 2 rushing scores, A.J. Brown ripped off chunk plays, and Philadelphia's offense felt connected and dangerous. For about 12 minutes of game time, they looked like the team that everyone still talks about when they whisper championship window. Then their possessions turned brittle. Punts, a failed goal line push, a missed field goal, and a fumble. They finished the rest of the game with a string of possessions that read like a bad comedy sketch. 3-and-outs, stalled drives, nothing longer than 33 yards. The scoreboard froze them out, and the narrative turned fast. Yahoo Tetao. On the other side, Dallas staged a textbook reminder that football is elastic, spectacularly flexible. Dak Prescott, who has been asked to carry too much at times this season, quietly rebuilt a game plan and executed it under pressure. He finished with 354 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and the kind of late-game pocket poise that turns close calls into miracles. The pivotal moment, the one that pushed the Cowboys into field goal range, was a 24-yard completion to George Pickens with just 44 seconds left. A play that set up Aubrey and a finish people will be talking about for weeks. Reuters, George Pickens deserves his own paragraph because some performances demand one. 9 catches for 146 yards and a touchdown. That's not stat padding, that's domination. Pickens made contested grabs, attacked seams, and looked every inch the number 1 target Dallas hopes he can be. Meanwhile, CeeDee Lamb had a quieter day and some drops, but Pickens' emergence on this stage gave the Cowboys a go-to weapon when it mattered most. For a player who was traded and asked to adapt to a new offense, that was the kind of statement game that changes how defenses plan for you next week. Yahoo Tetao. What makes this particular collapse feel worse than the box score is how it unfolded. Philadelphia's first 3 drives were explosive. Then, as if someone flipped a switch, their offense got timid. The run game, usually a stabilizer, never found daylight. Saquon Barkley managed just 22 yards on 10 carries and turned the ball over late, a fumble that was an exclamation point on the night's unraveling. The Eagles' problems weren't only schematic, they were mental. When the middle of the game becomes a series of small defeats, penalties, short gains, a sack at the worst possible time, the momentum doesn't just slip away, it leaks. Yahoo Tetao. The Cowboys' comeback wasn't only about big plays, it was about a reset in temperament. After a slow start, the defense tightened, forcing the Eagles into uncomfortable third downs and shutting the door on chunk runs. The offense, meanwhile, started hitting higher leverage throws and letting explosive plays do the heavy lifting. That 72-yard drive before halftime that got Dallas onto the board was the first sign that the game had shifted from Eagles' control to Cowboys' opportunity. Once Prescott had found rhythm and Pickens was winning downfield, the comeback became a matter of time, guts, and precision. Fox 4 News, Dallas-Fort Worth. And then there's the cruel, tiny reality of late-game football. One play can be the difference between exhale and heartbreak. With 1:44 left and the Eagles clinging to a 1-score lead, a sack of Jalen Hurts on 3rd and 2 forced a punt and handed the ball back to Dallas. Prescott scrambled for a touchdown to tie it, then connected with Pickens to set up Aubrey. That 42-yard boot as the clock blinked to 0 was brutal in its simplicity. Quiet leg, louder consequences. For the Eagles, it's a night they'll replay in slow motion. For the Cowboys, it's a shot of belief they desperately needed. Reuters now the ledger. The Cowboys improved to 5-5-1, which keeps their faint playoff hopes alive and gives them momentum heading into December. The Eagles slipped to 8-3 and, more importantly, ceded a little of the aura that comes with being a team everyone expects to contend. Records matter, but so do impressions. A loss like this forces questions about identity, play calling, and how deep a team's composure runs when the lights get hot. Philly still has time to right the ship, but tonight's collapse is the kind of scar that invites scrutiny. NBC Sports. If you're an Eagles fan, this is where the conversation gets sharp. Why did an offense that opened the day looking like a top unit disappear for 3 quarters? Coaches and coordinators will answer with adjustments and buzzwords. Players will answer with film study and, hopefully, corrections. But the truth is uglier and simpler. Football is a game of momentum, and losing it is often the result of 100 little mistakes rather than one glaring failure. Fixing that requires humility, practice, and a bit of courage to let things get ugly in order to get better. SportsTalkPhilly.com. For the Cowboys, tonight is oxygen. It's the kind of comeback that breeds swagger because it proves you can fight through adversity and still win. But it's not a season-defining miracle. Dallas still has holes to fix: consistency, discipline, depth, and the rest of the league will pay attention to whether this was a turning point or a beautiful, isolated footnote. What it does give them is belief. And belief can be an underrated strategy in November when rosters are tired and margins are thin. Bleacher Report. If you want one image to hold on to from this game, make it simple. A stadium that spent an hour believing one story, then watched it flip in a heartbeat. The Cowboys sprinting downfield, the ball finding George Pickens, and then a kicker finishing a comeback with a quiet, decisive swing. Football, in its best and worst moments, is a theater of momentum. Tonight, the curtain fell on a comeback that will be replayed on slow rotation, because comebacks don't just win games. They rearrange what teams believe they can be. So here's the last thing. Comebacks don't rewrite seasons, but they do rearrange confidence. The Cowboys left with a win and a new rhythm. The Eagles left with questions and a calendar that won't pause for reflection. Either way, the next time these teams meet, nobody will walk into the stadium thinking the ending is settled. Evan McPherson drilled a 63-yard field goal as time expired in the first half, breaking his own Bengals franchise record. His previous long was 59 yards and cutting New England's lead to 17-13 at halftime. Cincy Jungle. The kick came after a late Bengals drive sparked by chunk plays from Joe Flacco, Chase Brown, and T. Higgins got Cincinnati into range for a heave that McPherson calmly converted. It was the kind of momentum swing that put a scare into the visiting Patriots and gave the home crowd something to cheer about. Cincy Jungle. Despite the historic boot, New England held on. The Patriots won the game 26-20, meaning McPherson's record-setting kick ultimately didn't change the final result. Reuters. For McPherson personally, the kick is an encouraging sign in a season where he's battled inconsistency. It's also a reminder why teams invest in a reliable leg. One swing can flip a halftime scoreboard and lift a locker room. SI. If you want the short image to remember, the ball sailing through the uprights from 63 yards as the first half clock hit 0. Franchise history in a single loud moment. Cincy Jungle.